Hi and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm removing the propeller shaft from the car and then replacing the center bearing and the center rubber mount, as well as the flex discs or the flex couplings on the two ends of the propeller shaft. One side connects to the transmission, the other to the differential. And because I'm removing the propeller shaft, then I will need to support the transmission right below the transmission pan. And I have a lift here, of course, but if you don't have a lift, then you'll have to raise the car on 4 jack stands. And I tried to go with a shortcut and remove the exhaust shield right above where the two exhaust pipes meet, right there. I tried to remove that. It was kind of difficult. I ended up removing the exhaust, the bracket that connects the two exhaust pipes together that you see there. I think it's a 12 millimeter bolt and a 13 millimeter nut, or the reverse of that, but it was kind of difficult. It's doable. But now that I've done it, it's best to disconnect the exhaust pipes first. Then it's much easier to remove the exhaust shield. And so I'm supporting the transmission pan and then removing the transmission mount. There are 4 16 millimeter nuts that connect this bracket, the transmission mount bracket, to the body, and then 2, I believe, also 16 millimeter. I'll have the torque values and the description, and also I'll try to show them in the video. But you can just remove this entire thing. And by the way, this is a W210 E320, but this procedure is applicable to many other Mercedes Benzes, including the W220. So this is the flex disc that connects the front of the propeller shaft to the transmission. And you will have to sort of remember or watch this video or take photos of the configuration of where the washer goes. The washer basically always touches the rubber. If you keep that in mind, then you'll not make a mistake. And you'll have to turn it, of course, each time to get to the next bolt and nut. To do that, you will have to have that's why it's important to have the car sort of horizontal to the ground. And the ground has to be, of course, 180 degrees. Because you cannot keep the car in park. You would have to shift to neutral in order to rotate the propeller shaft. And you need to do that only as you open the bolts and as you tighten them back up at the end. After that, or in between, you can put the gear back to park. So you'll need a wrench on one side and then a socket on the other. I think this is a 19 millimeter socket. And you'll want to loosen the center support mounts bolts as you remove this, and I'll show that in a second. But this job is really not very difficult. If you have a lift, it's so much easier. If you don't, it's also very much doable with jack and jack stands. You'll just have less room. It will take a little longer, but with a little patience, it can be done easily. There are times that it becomes a lot easier if you have a helper. As you can see, there is some grease there leaking out of the transmission seal, and I'll have to do that at some point in the near future. I mean, these cars are old. This is a 2001 E320. So as of December of 2023, it's a 22, 23-year-old car. And there's a small leak right at the seal of the differential. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because these, I mean, the car has got, I don't know, over 80, I think maybe 90,000 miles by now. And so these flex discs over time, after 23 years, this is the first time they're being replaced, they do develop cracks. And then if they're not replaced on time, it could result in catastrophic failure. So this is the center mount, two, I believe, 13 millimeter bolts, and I'll have the torque values for that too. So you remove the two bolts, and then that makes it so much easier to. It gives you the flexibility to using a pry bar to pry out the propeller shaft, as you can see me do here. This is at the differential end, and I have the exhaust now. Since I've removed the shield, I have the exhaust there, the pipes, so this kind of doesn't fall. It just lies on the exhaust pipes, the propeller shaft. And so this is at the transmission end, pretty much the same way, pry it out. And if the flex disc kind of stays stuck to the either side, transmission or differential, then you can still keep prying until you get it out. It just depends. I mean, this one wasn't too difficult to remove, but yours could be. Just be patient, and eventually it will come out. So what I'm doing here now, this is after I've removed the exhaust shield. I should have disconnected this first and then removed the exhaust shield. Believe me, it becomes a lot easier. And also, and the same is true for the installation. Now you'll need some copper grease when you put these back together because of the high temperatures, and some, I guess, WD-40. Just saturate the touch points of these nuts and bolts a couple hours before you do this work, just in case. I had replaced the catalytic converter on this car before, and I had applied copious amounts of copper grease to the nuts and the bolts, so they're coming out very easily. And then just this is one of the times you may need somebody else to assist as you push the propeller shaft out of the car towards the differential towards the rear of the car. And when you install it the same way, bring it in from the differential side, from the back to the front. And if you're not replacing, that was the center mount, if you're not replacing the center mount or the bearing, center bearing, then you can do everything right there in place. You don't have to remove the propeller shaft. So I'm using a large hammer, just hitting it hard until it comes out. And as you can see, there are some serious cracks here that were not visible. I could see one or two of them before, but as you can see, there are quite a few cracks all over on both of the discs. The other one kind of remained stuck to the transmission. And again, using a pry bar, you can get it out. And this one is actually even worse than the one in the back. So you'll need a 3-jaw puller to remove the center bearing from the propeller shaft, and I'll have the part numbers and the prices and the vendors where I got mine from. And you'll need this Chevron multi-fac EP2 grease, as well as the full synthetic black grease, one of them from Walmart, the other from Amazon. I think each costs about $15. The Chevron one, you can, if you have wheel grease, you can use that. But the black one, I recommend that you use. That's the exact same one that Mercedes Benz recommends. It's got the same chemicals as the one that Mercedes sells for a lot more. And I'm using the old bearing on top of the new one, and then you'll need to be creative here and find, and you might be able to rent some of these things I'm using here from your local, if you're in the US, auto parts stores. There are tools that will have these, especially tools used to remove wheel bearings. But using a hammer, you'll have to just put it back in gradually and evenly. You see the two markers right above my helper's hand. There's another marker on the other half of the propeller that will have to exactly match to the center of these two when you put it back together, because these are sort of balanced at the factory, and you want to do that. This is the center mount, the rubber mount. This is probably the hardest part of this job. Again, you'll have to find the right props in order to push this one back in. Again, I'm using the center bearing for this because it kind of fit that perfectly, and then I'm using old bearings from I think this is a Honda bearing and sockets and all kinds of things in order to hammer that back in. I'm sort of enacting it here, not hitting it hard, but I did that while I was not recording. And this is the rubber boot. You'll have to replace that too. The part is kind of cheap. And then clean everything. And then this is where you use the Valvoline, the black grease. Just generously apply all around it. And inside the other half of the propeller where that goes. And then put the boot on until you hear it click in place. And this is the other marker that has to be matched to the center of the other two. And again, you'll need somebody's help to visually inspect and make sure that you're putting it in correctly. As you can see, it's perfectly aligned in the center, the top marker and the center of the two bottom ones. And then clean all the mating surfaces, and then using the wheel grease or the chevron grease, put a good amount of it inside of the two ends of the propeller shaft, and also apply some of it to at the two ends, transmission and the differential. So I'll have another video soon, as soon as I find some time to replace the main seal in the differential. Hopefully I can do that within the next 3 months. And then feed the shaft in from the back, from the differential side. Again, you'll need somebody's help. And pay attention to how the center bracket should be oriented. And of course, you must do this with the, it's very, very difficult if you try to do this with the exhaust pipes connected. But if you disconnect the exhaust pipes, then it's really a breeze. These flex discs I got from Pelicanparts.com. They're about $170, but they're made in Germany. And these should last the car another 100,000 miles for sure, or at least another 15 years. And so you want to make sure that, you know, what comes out of the flex disc on both sides go inside, as you will see right there, so that it's seated correctly on both sides. So at first I used pliers to hold the nut in the back, and then I asked my helper to hold it afterwards. There's very little room there if you have larger hands. To do this, but and pay attention carefully, of course, that that the washer meets the rubber side, not the metal. If you have an air gun or electric or battery gun, it makes this job, the removal and the installation, a lot easier. But of course, it's doable by hand. And you'll need to put the car back in neutral to do this. And so if you didn't have to, or if you didn't want to remove the or replace the center bearing and center mount, then really you can you don't have to worry about everything you saw me do until this point, from the time I removed them until now. Really, you leave the propeller shaft in place, of course. You pry the shaft, the flex discs out, and then put the new ones in. And again, make sure that everything is aligned properly and seated. So as you can see, there are three, not sure what to call it, but the tripod or whatever of the shaft versus the they don't align to each other. As make sure you notice that from the differential side, it goes into three distinct, each side, three distinct holes of the flex discs. And as you can see here, the washer is on the rubber side, on the flex disc side. And now the washer is on the other side because it touches the flex disc or the rubber. I think this is a T60 Torx socket. And usually these bolts are M12s, not M10s. If it's M12 in your case, then of course if it's an E320 it would be M12, but depending on what your car came with, you may need to replace them with M10 bolts, in which case the torque value is different. And to figure out whether a bolt is M12 or M10, you can search in Google. I'm sure there are places that explain that, but you can measure it with a ruler or whatever measurement device you may have. It's the diameter of the bolt in millimeters, not the head of the bolt, the part that is threaded. This would have been a perfect time for me to replace the transmission mount that hasn't been replaced for probably 30,000 miles, but I didn't have a new one, so I'll have to do this again. Just this part of it, but the torque value is the same for the two bolts here that connect the transmission mount to the transmission, as well as the four bolts of the black bracket that connects it to the body of the car. I think they're all 40 Newton meters, but I'll have that in the description, as I said before, in the description and also in the video for you. And once you have installed this bracket, then the transmission support can be removed. I don't have the torque value for the exhaust shield bolts. There are, I think, 4 of them, but just hand tighten those. The last thing you want to install are the 2 bolts of the center bracket. and torque these to 30 Newton meters, I believe. Yeah, there's one other bracket too that you would need to remove and put back in. I don't know if I showed that in the beginning, but the job is done. I hope you found this video of use, and talk to you later. Bye-bye.